location. Now they're disputing that this isn't the cesium-137. They're saying this is radium and other things that naturally occur in the environment. Whatever it is abnormally high.
With the recent earthquake activity stirring in the Ring of Fire, the Diablo Canyon power plant located near Avila Beach in San Luis Obispo, resting near not one but 4 fault lines, is a clear and present danger. The second fault, known as the Hosgri Fault, was only discovered after the plant's completion. In November of 1927, the Hosgri Fault generated a 7.1 magnitude earthquake 10 miles offshore. A 2013 document filed by former Nuclear Regulatory Commission Inspector Michael Peck insisted on closing down Diablo until the commission determined whether the plant's equipment could survive higher seismic stress levels. In 1981, Diablo was incorrectly retrofitted when employees failed to reverse the plans for the twin reactors. Regardless, the Nuclear Regulation Commission approved the safety of Diablo's monstrosity of incompetence. Diablo has a seismic monitoring and safety system ready to shut it down immediately in the event of significant ground motion.
The motion is detected by sensors in the ground and provides 3-dimensional data on seismic conditions.
But that won't stop the potential damage unleashed by the fuel rods as witnessed during the Fukushima debacle. Of course, Pacific Gas and Electric would like you to believe this ticking time bomb is good for jobs, energy consumption of its 2 million recipients, and the way forward as old man coal is aggressively shut down.
So if somebody wants to build a coal power plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
But the voices opposed are many. After President Richard Nixon called for construction of 1,000 nuclear plants by the year 2000, 1,900 anti-nuclear movement protesters were arrested in 1981 during a 10-day civil disobedience blockade of the Diablo Canyon power plant.
With the main gate cleared and the last blockader in jail, Pacific Gas and Electric made final preparations to start the reactor. But then, at the last moment, PG&E publicly admitted a grave mistake. There are 2 reactors at Diablo, mirror images of each other. The blueprints for units 1 and 2 had gotten mixed up, and the earthquake supports for the cooling pipes, the same cooling system designed to prevent a meltdown, had been installed backwards. It was the first of hundreds of mistakes discovered later, all made on the $2.5 billion structure described by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as the most highly analyzed building in the world.
Today, most locals and tourists are completely unaware of the passion Californians vented against the nuclear energy mafia just 33 years ago.
Fukushima resting right over those mountains.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Experts would have us just bury our heads in the sand, but some are already preparing for the inevitability of America's Fukushima.
If Diablo blows, nobody's staying around to use it. I've actually got backpacks in my car, you know, for heading out. Preparedness, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
But the whole idea that they're going to sound the sirens and we're all going to head north, it just won't work.
Yeah.
Northeast. So
yeah.
I wish it wasn't there. But it is, and maybe they'll deactivate it, and that would be fine with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think it's great how the citizens on our own can be prepared, yet, you know, we're asking our government basically to take care of us, and they're, you know, telling us to look the other way. Yeah. And how can you do that when all of this is at risk?
Well, it always comes in the limelight once there's an earthquake. So this Napa earthquake has made everybody kind of think about it again. You know, that a good earthquake would cause the plant to blow, and would want to get out of here.
When you look around and you see all of this beauty, all these families, all these people, how does that make you feel knowing that they're okay with a potential Fukushima situation here in America?
We know we couldn't all get out. You know, they say head north, head east, northeast once the plant warns us. But you know that you couldn't do that. The freeway would be jammed. That's why, you know we could go across the Santa Maria River bed and head south. I raised 7 children in this town, and I taught them all to run home no matter what their school told them, because we were going to hop in the car and get out somehow. They weren't going to wait for school buses. But yeah, it's a big problem. They say we provide 20% of California's power at that plant. But I think they named it Diablo for a reason.
As the purported Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. For Infowars.com, I'm John Bound.
And that is the report that we just premiered here on the radio. That's the type of reports we have every night, 7 o'clock Central, Infowars Nightly News. We just skipped this network break. I do that routinely because it just doesn't feel right to even go to break when we're covering subjects this hardcore. And the final addendum I would add, when we've had physicists and other experts on, nuclear physicists and, of course, seismologists and geologists, is that the entire ring of fire has been very active the last decade in the Pacific, and the only area that hasn't had a major earthquake, 8.0 or higher, is the piece of the ring of fire through California. And so it's set to go. And they built Fukushima on a fault line. And you saw what happened with that. 5 of the 6 reactors melted down. 2 of them blew completely up. And I was brought up total free market anti-communist. And so they would attach, like, oh, not liking GMO or not liking, radiation to being a commie. So I was like, nuclear power is great. It's safe. It's wonderful. Well, the truth is, it isn't. They hide the problems. It's done wrong. I'm all for technology. But just because some of the left historically is against something doesn't mean then they weren't right. Now the left today says they love nuclear power and they love GMO and they love, look at Obama. So I don't just go off left wing or right wing. I go off real research, real issues. And they've got a Nuclear Regulatory Commission, UN report, our own Nuclear Commission's report. 91% of the 400 and whatever it is reactors, 427 or whatever it is that are energy producing. Then they've got hundreds of other research reactors, like the one at the J.J. Pickle Center in North Austin. That's a big one for a research reactor. So it's actually thousands if you count those. 91% are leaking. And at that very Diablo plant a few years ago, it was on NBC News, they kept having leaks. So they were supposed to turn the alarms on when there's a leak. And the headline was, well, we've decided we're releasing some radiation safe. We don't want to scare people. We're going to stop turning the alarms on. So, there could be an earthquake and the whole thing blows up. They're not going to turn those alarms on. Used to, government wasn't perfect, but it would try to not blow things up. It would try to not have nuclear war. It would try to not start war with the Russians. Our government didn't openly fund al-Qaeda to run around chopping Christians' heads off, even back when Reagan, was running them up against the Russians. Now it's just so much more immoral. Now, there's another one. Possible leak causes San Onofre nuclear plant shutdown. That's another one out, and that's Diablo Canyon. The other is the Diablo Canyon plant in St. Louis Obispo County. And then it goes through that. It was a precautionary shutdown, and then they went on to say, but we're going to stop issuing the alerts now. We don't want to scare you. And again, it's this attitude to just absolutely ignore everything. Do we have our guest? Okay. John Rappaport is an investigative journalist with NoMoreFakeNews.com. And he's joining us because I got a call about 2 weeks ago from Dr. Wakefield, who the media has tried to discredit and attack, the British doctor that now lives in Austin, Texas. And he said, we're going to be breaking with a major government whistleblower in the next week the fact that they knew that vaccines were linked to autism. And that reminded me of the 2000 meeting at the CDC that got reported 4 years later by ABC News, where the head of the CDC, in a big roundtable conference, concluded and admitted, yes, if the public ever finds out about this, you can read the quotes, we're all going to jail. We got to cover this up, but don't give it to your kids. I'm going to tell my daughter, don't give it to my grandkids. And we ought to pull those articles back up and do a report on that as a flashback. But this has come out before. that they know we've gone from autism 1 in 30,000 to 1 in 68 a few years ago. Now they're saying 1 in 56. The point is, it's epidemic. They can say, oh, it's overdiagnosis, whatever. No, it's not. And sure, it's pesticides, it's chemicals, it's a cocktail, but it's the vaccines in babies pushing it over the edge. And I've had medical doctors on, you name it. There's CNN, autism rate now 1 in 68 U.S. children. And that's CNN going with an old number this year. It's actually 1 in 50-something from the doctors I've talked to. It's set to be, in some countries, they're even worse than us that give vaccines, 1 in 20-something. I think that's South Korea. I go to restaurants. I go to movie theaters, take my kids to movies. There'll be like a third of the kids in there. Don't know who they are and are obviously autistic. I mean, I go to a resort with my kids, a hotel at the beach, and you go out to the pool, and there's like 30 kids, and 10 of them can't talk. I mean, we're getting hit hard. And what's going to happen when half of the kids can't talk? Now, it's eugenics. This is the same government that shot black people up with syphilis. And I use that example because everybody knows about Tuskegee. People don't know about the 3,000 or 4,000 other declassified nerve-gassing troops, killing foster children, radiating children, killing Appalachians, adding poison to water, spraying people in the New York subway with bioweapons in '68, having military doctors there when they were dying to take blood samples. This is what we know about Project Shad, atomic soldiers, 36,000 Nazis brought here in Operation Paperclip. My grandfather worked for oil companies in West Texas and New Mexico and told me that there were people that almost got in fistfights. The only place to eat would be military bases that had restaurants, and that you'd go there and there'd be more Germans at military bases in the 50s out in the West than there were regular troops. I remember looking at my grandmother going, Nazis at military bases and GIs wanting to kick their butts because they would smart off to people. Anybody that watches documentaries about Werner von Braun, you name it, even when he turned himself in, he was so arrogant to the GIs and to the generals, saying, I'm smarter than you and all this stuff. And I mean, this is who, and again, it's not that we're Nazi-run, it's that the Nazis were coming home. Our government and the British government put Hitler in and loved all that stuff until they double-crossed him. And so a government run by 36,000 Nazis, NASA, the CDC, everything, the CIA, you name it, do you trust them to take their vaccines? And the answer is absolutely not. Now it's just more sophisticated. We're going to break in a few minutes, John, but tell folks, because we've been running your articles every day at Infowars.com, you've been on this, of a major whistleblower being retaliated against, more people coming forward with the cover-up of the vaccines. Give us a snapshot of what's coming up in the next segment.
William Thompson, he's the whistleblower at the CDC, major scientist. 2004, he and his co-authors buried data that would have showed a much higher rate of autism in children who were vaccinated with the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella. He admits this now in a public statement as of August 27, that he cooked the data, that he and his co-authors sat on it for 10 years while more cases of autism piled up because of vaccines. Nobody said anything. It was omerta, the law of silence, and he broke the law through his lawyer because he lawyered up. And yet, nothing is happening of any note in the major media. The study hasn't been retracted. This is, if you just look at the scientific, medical research community, an admission like this is like a time bomb going off. You would expect all kinds of recriminations, investigations, shut down of research programs. We've got to go back and look at all the vaccine studies that we've done because they could have been faked as well. Nothing like this has happened. They're just still... And
we're trying to break the blockade. I'm going to tweet some of your articles and the video out coming up at the end of this hour. And everybody to retweet it. We need to break this blockade of silence with the dinosaur media trying to suppress this coming up. And so we're going to send out a string of his articles that he's put out the last few days at Real Alex Jones from the Infowars.com posting, so you're aware of this. But There is a blackout on this information. Stay with us. It could bring them down.
We're on the mark.